Welcome to the Unity South Central Region Business Mastermind. We're launching for 2025, which is mind-boggling for me. I was just telling someone in my family, it's really not fair, you know? They ought to figure out a different way to have you put your birthday in. Because when I have to scroll back on that little scrolly thing, 1961 is a long time back. It takes a long time to get there. I don't think I imagined myself in 2025. I think that has always felt like a really long way from where I was. And here we are in 2025, and the world around us is changing dramatically. And that is why we have the launch this year talking about leadership in a new way. What does it mean to lead in a new way? So we have an extremely polarized world. No matter where you are, trust me, I'm traveling, no matter where you are in the world. We have a very polarized world with different opinions and different ways of being. And we have a very clear vision, most of us, of the things that we don't like. Most of the people that you serve have a clear picture of what they don't like. And some of them have a pretty clear picture of some of the things that they do. So my question for you as leaders is, how do you lead for a new world? For a world that is in the middle of change, that is changing in more dramatic ways than we have seen it change in our lifetime. Really dramatic ways that include robots and artificial intelligence and people being afraid that the aliens are coming. How do we lead when our theology teaches us, in its very non-dogmatic way, it teaches us to hold a vision. And that when we hold a vision, that all the powers of the universe can work underneath that and bring it into manifestation. But we have to know what the vision is. So my question for you as we start today is, do you have a vision for the world that we're going into and how your ministry will serve it? And while many of the classes that we do here are very black and white, very clear processes and practices, this particular class is an invitation for you to open your mind in a bigger way to the gift that your ministry brings into the world. So let's jump in. There we go. All right. So right now, the world is calling for something new and different. A new leadership paradigm is available to us. Now, you don't have to lead in a new way, but you can. And I want to invite you to consider what that might mean to you, because we have the opportunity, if we choose, to help move the thought and consciousness of people from being fear-based and living in a competitive world to being love-based and working in a collaborative world. And that starts for us in how we lead our communities. We are a living example of that. There are lots of opportunities for us to live from fear because the world is changing so much, and we can be in fear of whether or not we're making enough money, whether or not we can afford our buildings, whether or not we have enough volunteers, whether or not our staff is doing their job well, whether or not we're going to be able to develop the volunteer teams to do the work that needs to be done that there are limited hands to do. There are a lot of things that can feel big and even overwhelming in this work that we do. So in this space, we talk about some of those overwhelming things, because getting up on Sunday and speaking from your heart and allowing spirit to communicate through you sometimes is a whole lot less overwhelming than figuring out how to lead a community rather than how to teach a community. So I want to invite you to think about how you lead, because leaders play a key role in transforming the world. And you are a leader, whether you've been a leader for 3 days or whether you've been a leader for many years. Something different is being asked of you than has been asked in the past. And the reason we're doing this is to remind ourselves as we start this year that we are aligning with unity values, and we are also really aligning with the concept of service to a bigger picture than just what happens in our individual church or our individual spiritual community. We are aligning with a transformation that is global. We are aligning with a divine impulse for something healing, something loving, something compassion-filled, something that incorporates forgiveness and transformation. And all of those concepts they're demonstratable. They're more than just something we talk about. They're part of our leadership platform, and they come from us authentically. So let's talk about the difference between these two styles. And there probably are 20 styles of leadership that we could talk about. But let's talk about two styles. Let's talk about leadership that is oriented towards control and power. And that doesn't have to be bad power. Sometimes it's nice to just be able to make a decision, to just have the authority to make a decision. There can be a certain satisfaction to being in control and having power in your leadership. And then there can be a certain satisfaction to empowerment and service as the foundation of your leadership. And we're going to talk about each of these more in depth. Another is profit and competition. It's very easy for us to look at our ministry and feel like our job is to make sure that we're profitable and that we are well known and well attended above anybody else in the market who might be offering something similar. Versus finding our purpose, working into our purpose, and even collaborating with other organizations that do something similar. And again, there's a difference between leading from fear or leading from love and our intuitive impulse. That thing that is what brought us to unity, the fact that we get to open our heart and really feel the indwelling divine and bring it into our work. There is hierarchical leadership, and there is inclusive, equal participation. And when you're a minister, a lot of responsibility lands on your desk. However, our work, as much as it might seem like our work is that responsibility, our work is to empower a community to be responsible. And that's a really big shift in thinking. And my invitation to you today as you're here is to consider the shifts in thinking that are offered. Because much like you, when you are in the platform, you're teaching with detachment. Your teaching comes through you and you offer it to your community, understanding that as a non-dogmatic organization, we are not insisting that things are a certain way. We're inviting people to consider possibilities that we have experienced personally that have changed our lives, or that our founders experienced that changed lives and have changed lives over and over. So when we step into a new form of leadership, we are empowering people to think about who they are in a different way by thinking about who we are and living in a different way as leaders. So let's talk about the difference between leading from power and leading from service. As I said, there are lots of things that are really comfortable about having power. And interestingly, there are very few ministers that I've encountered who are all about gaining the power. More often, what happens is that the community is willing to give it to you. I don't care what we do about that. That's your job. You figure it out. We've never really resolved that problem well. We're going to give it to you. Come up with some solutions for us. How do you think we should do this? We believe that this is yours to do. And so over time, more and more things can land on your desk that you're just making decisions about. You have the power and authority to make those decisions. Great. You get the decisions made and you go back to planning what you're going to do next week, what you're going to speak about, or how you're going to teach your class, or whatever else it is that we have to do. There is a difference between leading that way or cultivating a community that actually realizes this is their community and they are empowered to make decisions. And there are lots of ways to do that. You can do that by being someone who regularly surveys your community. Let them know what's on your table, invite them to give you feedback, create communication loops. There are lots of things that you can do, but I invite you to start with a simple daily question that moves you from thinking about what you have to do to what is possible. And that question is, how can I serve my team and my community today? I am here to be in service to them. How can I serve my team, all those people who are counting on me, who work with me every day, and my community every day? One of the answers to that will naturally be, who can I empower? That is a good offshoot question. Who can I empower today? How can I empower them? How can I empower my administrator to make a choice? How can I empower new teams? How can I empower the ushers to do something more? Who can I give the experience that this is their community? Just a place to start, but an easy question. So emotional intelligence is at the core of this work. You might have come here because you feel like your business acumen isn't strong enough and you want to increase your business acumen. And I'm here to tell you we will do that. We will do that over the course of the year. Whether you are able to attend live or you choose to watch the recordings of these sessions, you'll have a chance to increase your business skill. We'll do that. But foundationally, all of that is not as important as who you choose to be as a leader. Because everything that you do in your business practice comes from who you want to be as a business leader. And that's different than who you want to be as a spiritual leader. The processes are different. The questions are different. The interactions are different. As a spiritual leader, you're an educator. As a business leader, you are a manager empowering people through the manifestation processes that are part of what we do. Care for property, care for money, care for service into the community, all of that. All of that is part of the business management. So emotional intelligence is not always something that we think about when we think about business. We think about business acumen. But emotional intelligence is about recognizing why people are in the field of business with you at all. They are working with you because we are a loving environment. We are an environment where they can come in and feel safe in a very unique way. And any of you that have worked in the mainstream world, in the secular world in the last 5 years will understand this inherently. But if you have been in a church environment or a spiritual environment for 3 years, 5 years, or more than that, I'm here to tell you the world that the mainstream public works in and that our people work in is different. It's very loving and very centered, and we handle our problems different. That's a great thing, except that The people who work with you are not shielded. They are learning to open up their heart into your environment. So your ability to be an emotionally intelligent leader and to recognize that they operate differently in your environment is important. Emotions are not distractions in our environment as they might be in somebody else's. Emotional intelligence or emotional presence with our staff and the people we work closest to builds trust. And we need big trust. We need the energy of big trust in our spiritual communities. It's core to everything we do. So being able to walk in, if you had an argument at home in the morning and say to your admin, you might sense that I'm a little off today. I had a rough morning at home. Please know that has nothing to do with you. It's just what's going on for me. If I'm a little quiet today, I'm doing a little reflective work. Or, my mom's sick and my heart is there, or I had to handle something I'm not really at liberty to talk about, which happens for a lot of us as ministers, but I'm thrown off a little bit by it. So I just want to let you know, I really appreciate you. And I'm in a little space of my own today. That kind of emotional awareness stops there from being any misunderstanding. It's a different kind of leadership. It's a vulnerable and authentic leadership that opens the door for your staff to do the same thing to you, to walk in your office and go, geez, Jen, I'm so sorry. I know I'm not myself today. So I'm going to play some soft music in the office and kind of, take care of myself. If you need something, please come and let me know. But if I'm not chatty, that's why. It stops misunderstandings, but it also builds trust in relationship. And it's a different way of leading in business than what we will have experienced in the world. So how can you build that in your community? One of the ways is that you can do emotional check-ins with your team. So generally, if we do a team meeting, we'll say something like, hey, what was your win this month? Tell me what happened that you're excited about. It is valuable periodically to do an emotional check-in. What's the state of your emotions these days? Do you have a prevalent emotion going on? How are you feeling? It opens the door for deeper relationship. And your modeling of vulnerability gives permission for vulnerability in your community. Now, when you give permission for vulnerability, you have to be able to receive vulnerable people, right? You have to be willing to do that. But what do you want to build? In our churches and spiritual communities, we don't say, what does it cost us when we lose an employee? If you've worked in the secular world, you've heard that. It's very important that we have retention because what does it cost us? What it costs us when we lose an employee is relationship in the community. First and foremost, when the same person is there answering the phone over and over, that person becomes a trusted member of the community. People call when they're in tears because they just got a terminal diagnosis and they need a minister appointment. They call because they want to find out the Unity prayer line that they can give to a sister who's sick. They call because they volunteered their time and they can't remember when they're supposed to be somewhere and they're embarrassed. They call for lots of reasons. And when they have trust in the person who's sitting at that desk, they are able to be in a vulnerable place, to be received and met in a loving way, and to be kinder to themselves, to receive kindness from us. It costs a lot in our communities when we lose a staff member. It feels like they lost a member of the community. So it's incredibly important for us to be emotionally present in this new way of leading, in a way that builds the kind of communities and the kind of world that we want, a world that is love-based and collaborative and caring. So we do have to combine all of that with very logical ways of doing things. But we as leaders, we are drawn into this because we have strong intuition, we have strong vision. And those tools are equally important in our sacred spaces, as equally important to the logic that we use and the black and whiteness of business. Our intuition will tell us, I need to have this conversation, but today is not the right time. Everything in my body says, yes, this conversation needs to take place. Don't do it today. We don't always know why, but we get close to the people that we work with. We get close to our congregation. We might have a sense that someone is a little bit off, or that the timing isn't quite clear, or even that we are not in the best place to have that conversation yet. So different than mainstream business, ministry invites us to combine logic and rationale with vision and intuition. And we can cultivate that in our business environment by doing things like trusting gut feelings and letting them lead us instead of being locked into, we only do it this way. And also giving our folks a mindfulness moment. And what I mean by that is when you call a staff meeting or you sit down to meet with someone over a difficult situation, whatever that is, it could be planning an upcoming event or answering a difficult circumstance, whatever that is, to sit down and guide your staff through something that is not just prayer, because prayer is what we do. So when we step into prayer, everybody goes, yeah, we're going to pray. Let's be really mindful about why we're here today. We have decisions to make. So let's take a moment and mindfully release everything that can go that isn't needed in this space. And let's mindfully open to the indwelling divine. Let's mindfully bring our hearts into place, our minds into place. And I'm really willing to be in authentic space with you. I'm asking, are you willing to be in authentic space with me as we do this? It's not that it's so different from how we would pray, is it? But it's a conversation that invites them to think about what we're doing differently. So these are things that again, give permission for the people that you work with, whether they are paid employees or they're members of your community, to think about how we're going to come together. And all of the tools that we bring into play, not just your previous business experience, but everything that you can bring. And this is your job as a leader. You are setting the standard for how this will happen, as if your spiritual community, whatever size it is, 12, 240, or 2,000, you are working with the community that is a microcosm of the world that we live in. And when you can teach a community in a microcosmic way how to live collaboratively, how to listen to one another better, how to be emotionally present, how to be guided, and also how to use the benefit of your wisdom and experience gained over the year. When you can bring all of that together in the microcosm of your spiritual community, then you can expect and see it as possible in the macrocosm of the world that we live in. But if you can't make it happen in your community, how are you ever going to believe and hold a vision that it can happen somewhere else? What we're doing as spiritual leaders, I'm not talking about educators right now. What we're doing as spiritual leaders is incredibly, incredibly important to the vision our communities can have for leadership. We are giving them possibility by our mindful, heart-based, love-based, collaborative energy put into leadership. We are opening and giving them permission to practice it and creating space for them to envision it. And sometimes it's hard to envision in the world that we live in. So this is purpose-driven leadership. And when I say purpose-driven, what I'm saying to you is not mission. Mission, yes, we're mission-driven. But I'm talking about the mindset that you have to believe that your community can have an impact on the global frequency, on the global way we are, that your community is an important point of light in a world that is struggling right now. And what you do there, you can make it feel very small, or you can recognize that it is incredibly big. That you as a leader and the leadership standard that you set in place, who you choose to be as a leader, is so valuable in creating the vision and allowing the vision to go forward of a world that really does operate from love, from compassion, from forgiveness, from healing. All those core principles that are part of what we understand is unity. So when we align our organizational values, our mission, our everything, and deliver it with higher purpose, it's a different experience, friends. And it's a different experience that you have inside of yourself. And that's our work here. Our work is not to handle the world's problems. Our work here in this space together is to call forth the best leader you can be, to support that in one another, to see it in one another, to acknowledge it. This is a place where you can come and say, oh my gosh, I did the most wonderful, just incredible thing. And here's what happened. And it's also a space that you can come to and go, I did the most horrible thing. And oh my gosh, you can't believe what happened. How am I going to fix this? As a leader in a spiritual community, you don't have a lot of spaces like that. It can be a very alone position. You might have some team with your board, and you might have another minister that you work with, but we get so busy doing our job that we don't get a chance really to get some objectivity at how we're doing our job. And that's what this space offers. So key practices are, of course, to regularly visit your mission. Are you on mission? Whatever that mission is. And if you look at your mission and you say, I have no idea how to enact that mission. I have no idea what to do with those words. They mean nothing to me. I can't figure out what this mission even means in day-to-day practical application. Then it's time to reevaluate your mission. And it may be time for you to look at whether your mission really serves your community, because if you can't figure out how to lead into it, they can't. So look at your mission through the lens of actually whether or not it serves your community, whether it allows you to incorporate unity principles in daily practice. Because that's our objective, isn't it? Beyond the mission that's chosen by your individual community, your mission is to have them live into the mission using unity principles, using all the tools and practices that we have. So take a look at your mission, become very familiar with it. You should know it. It's important and incredibly valuable to what you're doing. And then incorporate practices that are related to living sustainably as a community. Sustainability can be how you live financially, but it's also how you care for your property. It's how you care for each other. It's retention of your staff. It's the bigger picture, isn't it? To be a sustainable community. We tend to have a lot of conversations with our boards and in our communities about being a growing community, because our focus gets so oriented toward money. And if we're growing, we're successful. But I had the opportunity to work this year with a community that has 60% of its membership that has been there longer than 10 years. That is a sustainable community. A community that has been together, that has gone through difficulty and survived, that has seen the up and downs of budgets and pandemics and financial loss and all kinds of things, but has held together. Sustainability is really meant differently when we think about community. It's not talking about ecology, even though that can certainly be part of the equation. I'm talking about the sustainability and what you see as the sustainable future of your community. And your ethical practices make a big difference. And we'll talk about ethics as we go through the year, but ethics at its core means living authentically and openly and transparently with your community. So they understand the whys behind the decisions that are made. And so they can see how things are happening and question if they have a question, because it's their community, not ours, even though we feel like we have responsibility for it. It's their community. Living into a culture of gratitude is something that comes up every November. We all talk about gratitude in November. We sprinkle our lessons with a little dash of gratitude throughout the year. But gratitude for you as a leader will change everything about your experience. I'm not talking about what you teach. I'm talking about your ability to say, thank you for the opportunity to grow in this way when things are rough. Your ability to connect to the divine in whatever way you do and say, I'm grateful for the opportunity presented here to grow my soul. I'm open to all the wisdom that can take me there. And to see that these things that happen in our spiritual community that can sometimes feel so devastating are these magnificent opportunities for us to grow on a soul level. And those are the times that we as leaders tend to close down the most because we start to shield ourselves and protect ourselves. But when we're able to feel some gratitude for the opportunity to cultivate a culture of gratitude, to speak to gratitude for one another, we grow exponentially, and so do our communities. And we need to grow our communities right now because our communities are hurting. Because the world is full of insults and anger and disagreement and polarity. And make no mistake, the people who are showing up in your centers are showing up because they're feeling that. So gratitude, living into gratitude for the fact that we get to lead at this time, gratitude for the fact that we can be different kinds of leaders. Beginning a meeting by saying thank you. Thank you to the people who unlocked the door, and thank you to the people who put the coffee on, and just thank you for showing up. I'm grateful for the gift of your time. Here's what we're here to do today. Sharing personal notes. This is a thing that we don't think we have time to do and we don't do anymore. I want to recommend that, and this is such a simple thing, but ask your admin or stop at the Walgreens on the way home and get yourself a box of thank you cards. And you ought to go through one every month. You need 12 stamps. If you can't write 12 thank you notes in a month for what's going on in your ministry, you are not looking. It means so much to people to get a handwritten card, and it can have 12 words. I saw you helping in fellowship this week. Thank you. It doesn't have to be a big long letter, but that sharing of personal gratitude with people in your ministry will change everything about your ministry. How are we as leaders when it comes to work-life balance and holistic well-being? Do we consider people's families, people's children, people's needs, what might be going on with parents, how they take care of other people? Do we remember who is caring for something beyond what goes on in the care that's brought to us? You know, we are caring for people, obviously, who show up at our office, but are we leading a caring culture? I often see churches and spiritual communities who do so many big things in the community beyond their walls and are lousy at making a phone call when somebody's sick. And so I just invite you to prioritize the well-being of your teams your office team, your building care team, the people who work side by side with you, who are doing the same job, who are working really hard to serve a community of people and feel like their lives are not as important as everybody else's. It's your opportunity to let them know that they are equally important. You can offer wellness programs. You can bring in a great meditation teacher to do a little meditation break for your team. Hey, I have something special. Instead of having a staff meeting today, we're going to get together, potluck a little bit, and I have a surprise for you. And just have somebody do a wellness meditation. It doesn't always have to be business. It tells the people that are working for you, working side by side with you, that their well-being matters to you. Promote work-life balance through supportive policies. What does that mean? That means that we have a policy. We understand that children are important. If your kids are out of school today and you need to be home, let's talk about how we can get things done. Because we have big snowstorms and people have to be home because their kids are home. How do you handle those things? How do you make work-life balance important so that your people can be healthy in their job and you can have that sustainable culture? They're practical tools for transitioning our way of leading from a very common power-oriented kind of leadership to a collaborative, empowering, lifting up, service-oriented perspective on leadership, to have heart-centered decision-making, which means instead of having someone come in and say, do you want me to do this or you want me to do that? Just take a breath. Just a breath. Some things we know right away, but if you don't know right away, hear this as permission to say, I don't know yet. Why don't you give me a little time? I want to think about that because it affects a lot of people. That heart-centered, still paused way lets people know something so much more than whatever decision you made. It lets them know that you cared enough to think about it. Have you ever brought a really important decision to somebody that you're really struggling with and they go, oh, that's easy, just do this. And then you walk away thinking you didn't even care about this thing, whatever it was. Taking time to pause, to think about who's impacted, not only helps you make a better decision, but it demonstrates care. And that's important. It builds trust. I really suggest to all the spiritual communities that I work with that you consider doing a community-wide vision board for 2025, that you find a bulletin board and you put up on that bulletin board all of your sheets of paper, whatever kind of cardboard you want to use, and that you invite members of your community to bring a picture, to go cut something out of a magazine that is reflective to them of what you're doing as a community, of who you are. And let them come and put the puzzle together. Do it over a weekend or two. And let them bring the parts. Bring some extra parts. You guys are going to want to add to that, to build on that. Let your community start it. Have your board do the next level. Then have your staff do a level. Then you add what needs to be added. But there's something that happens when we get beyond the words of planning the future of our community into the visual of what it feels like to be the community that we are. So if you have a small community, put up a small board. Don't put up a great big board because it will end up being partially empty. You can always put up 1 or 2 sheets. And then if you see that you need it, add to it. But let it be tight and close. Let them struggle a little bit to get all their little pieces in there because it will be fascinating for them. And something will emerge about your community that can never come in words. Feedback loops mean doing surveys, giving people a chance to make suggestions, having a suggestion box, opening up doors of communication and cultivating healthy communication. And you do that by how you set it up. This is a suggestion box for what we might do to make fellowship better. It's not a complaint box. We're not looking for what you think is wrong. We're looking for your suggestions on how we can make it better. So if you have some, please put them in today. We're working specifically on fellowship, just that. If you say, I want a suggestion for whatever you think is going on in the whole community, you won't get enough to take action on things. It'll be too widespread. But if you choose a particular area you can focus on, people can get really enthusiastic about that. You can get some great ideas that you can share, for example, with your fellowship team. Here's some great things. When you're working with that team, if people put crummy comments in there, take them out. You were clear up front. I'm looking for suggestions. I'm not looking for complaints. I'm looking for ways that we can improve this area. Now, sometimes really good suggestions come in answer to, we're really struggling with this thing, then put it in there. But this is part of the visioning and intuitive leadership part. We're not asking for suggestions to hurt anybody, because ultimately our job is to give people a safe place to work on themselves, to grow their indwelling divine, their connection, their sense of trust that the universe has their back, all of that. So we're careful about not hurting people in this environment, because they come with their hearts open in an entirely different way than they do almost anywhere else in the world. So participate in the protection and holding of that space. But feedback loops build trust. So leadership is not about our titles, even though we worked really hard for them. It's not about our power, even though our communities are willing to give it to us. They believe that our job is to make decisions for them. And in some cases it is. But more than anything, our job is to empower them to make good decisions and to make life choices for themselves. So think about your level of service. Leaders embracing new principles create harmony and joy in the community. When you think about leadership in a different way, the community you serve grows in a different way. So ask yourself, it's not a question for me. Ask yourself if you are willing to do what it takes to think through the lens of collaborative, empowering leadership. Are you willing to step back? And while you're thinking about that, here's a reflection for you. A leader is best when people barely know they exist. When their work is done, their aim fulfilled, the community will say, we did it ourselves. This is so hard sometimes, because ministry can be thankless. People appreciate our teaching, but they don't see a lot of the work that we do. And you are an incredibly skilled leader when that is so. When your finance team is handling financing, and your usher team is handling ushering, and your music team is delivering great music, and your volunteers are showing up and doing their jobs. When everybody is doing what they volunteered or stepped forward to do and feeling successful at it, because you are giving them the little tools they need to do it, you are a brilliant leader. And when you are standing back and saying, oh my gosh, that was amazing. You guys do such a good job. I appreciate you so much. I don't know how I would do all of this if I didn't have all of you doing what you do. That is good leadership. Leadership that empowers people, tells people that they can have an impact in the world. That the spiritual impulse that they feel within them is a motion of hope and productivity and change, and it's a gift for the community. So here's your reflection. How can you empower others to take ownership? Just write it down and let it let it simmer in there. You don't have to know the answer. This is a question I hope that you will ponder all year long, that it will continue to grow in you and give you opportunities to look differently at what you do. Here's one more for you to take with you today. The greatest leader is not necessarily one who does the greatest things. They are the one that gets the people to do the greatest things. The greatest leader is not necessarily the one who does the greatest things. They're the one who can get the people to do the greatest things. We forget sometimes in leadership in spiritual communities that we're there to bring people to their greatest, highest expression of the divine they are. We get really caught up in all the things we have to do. We teach them that they are that. We share those words and we teach them. But when the opportunity comes for them to work through the difficulties of something, we want to fix it because it's uncomfortable. And that discomfort is the thing that gives them the chance to call forward all the tools we've been teaching about. So the reflection is, what can you do to inspire greatness in your team? What can you do to inspire greatness in your team? I am delighted for your presence here. I am grateful beyond measure for your time, because I understand the value of your time. And I understand at the core of my being how important your work is in the world. What a huge, tremendous difference you make leading your community. So I thank you. I look forward to seeing you again. Like I said, we will have our regular Q&A next week. Anand, I'd love to hear your question or your comment. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to share something that I did this week that is aligned with what you are teaching and reminding us of. So I'm new to this community. I moved here from Puerto Rico. So I'm new on all the levels. And I said, people were already starting to ask me a lot of questions. And I said, I know nothing. You know so much more than me. And so I'm going to ask you to do what I call filling the bubble. So if you have a question, if you could come to me with the suggestion, recommendation, ideation that you have already within you and say, I recommend this thing, or I suggest, or I was thinking. And if you have a question, it could be, what do you think of that? So that they're already shifting into, and the retired minister did such a good job of empowering it's really community led and run. So this is just taking the baton and giving them another nudge or expansion. But it's been really powerful. And another thing that I did was I had a couple people say, well, I didn't want you to think that I fill in the blank. And I said, I promise you that I will take care of my thoughts. You don't have to worry about what I'm thinking because I'm going to be honest with you.
Awesome.
And you'll know. And I love you and I'm firing you from thinking for me.
Very good. Very good. When I came into ministry, I asked a minister who had many years of ministry experience under their belt. I said, if you could tell me, like, what is the most important thing I need to know being a minister? He said, all they ever really want from you is to feel loved. And I have found that to be one of the most important guideposts for this work. All anybody ever really wants is to feel loved and to feel it sincerely. And when you're able to say, I love you, I got this, you can care for me by letting me care for me. That's fantastic. Fantastic. And this space, as I said, is for you because this is no small job that you do. This is no like, oh, I got everything I need at school and I'm ready to go. Not like that. It's a job that invites us into our own spiritual growth over and over on every level of who we are. And so this space, for those of you who've been in ministry for a while, will take you into areas where you'll go, oh, yeah, I know that. I hadn't thought about it for a while. Thank you for reminding me. I want to invite you to consider inviting your board presidents to attend. This particular forum is open to ministers and board presidents, and there's a reason for that. Because if just think about what we said today about leadership. If your board president had been in this room, your board president would have heard some really important things about how you empower community rather than just you have to make the decisions about these things. They would have a deeper understanding of why your objective for growing souls is more important than your objective for growing money, right? And they would be able to, our board presidents are in for a year or 2 years, and then we get a new one. They, they're not like us where we have years and years to develop our ministerial understanding. They're in and they're out. But when they come to this gathering, they take this information back to their board. And it helps them so much more to lead a board that is aligned with how you're leading. So sometimes it's not comfortable. Sometimes we have to think to ourselves, how am I going to say what the problem is I'm having with my board president sitting right here? But the reality is, unless your problem is your board president is your partner in resolving. And if your board president is your problem, we might be able to work through some of that if you give me a call and say, hey, I'm having a problem with my board president understanding this concept. How do you feel about it? And can we talk about it in a more open way? Sometimes we just have to say things that are not aimed at anybody, that are just like, okay. And if you're a board president, you might want to think about it this way. So it can be very beneficial. So please feel free to invite your board president to attend. The ones that have, I have heard over and over from the ministers how helpful it's been for their ministry, for their board ministers to understand what the minister's job is a little bit better. And I hope that you will join us. Next week, we'll be back because it's the 3rd. It's our regular meeting time for our Q&A. I invite you to bring questions if you have any. And I also ask you, if there's someone out in the field that you feel like would benefit from this space, to please let them know and invite them to come in. It's we get more wisdom the more people that we gather. So, but it's here, and if it's not a good time fit, all of this is recorded. And if you can't be at a session, always the first of the month teachings are recorded and available on the Usker website. Okay. All right, my friend.
Sorry to interrupt, and I know we're trying to get out of here. I'm looking on the site and I'm not seeing where the business mastermind is.
So go across the top bar, and do you see a button that says resources?
Yep.
Okay, click on that. And does it say business mastermind right at the top? Otherwise, I'll bring it up. Maybe I'm misleading you.
It's not, it might be my internet. It's not allowing me to click, and the drop-down menu doesn't say it.
Oh, you know why? Because it's under support calls. Sorry about that.
There it is. I see it.
Over to support calls, and business mastermind is the first entry. And that's a good list for all of you to look at, because it really is a kind of a categorical listing of all the different areas that we have support services for your ministry. So do check that out. It's unitysouthcentral.org. And the region offers so many different things, scholarships for classes, and so many different opportunities for you to gather with other leaders, and information for your youth programs and all kinds of stuff. So go in and spend a little time on the website, and do get to know what Unity South Central Region has for you. It's a place built for you. Its entire purpose is to be of service to you. Okay.